Hey peeps, welcome back to Project Anonymous, and in today's video, we're going to show you how to add your own custom fonts in the lettering tool in Inkstitch.
So stick around and see how we do it. So Megan, why would you want to add a custom font to your lettering tool?
I would want to add custom fonts to the lettering tool because I feel like they turn out a little bit better than the fill stitches, and it's kind of limited in the lettering tool how many fonts there are.
Yeah, so this is a way you could add to your own Inkstitch extension and add some power to it, especially if you use the same kind of font all the time. This can be a way to make it a little bit easier for you to have that font available to you when you need it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, look at that. Nice.
It's not even how to add fonts.
It's not. This is how to use the lettering tool in Inkstitch. So the instructions on how to do this is already on the Inkstitch website. If you go to the lettering tool in Inkstitch, there's a link to font creation tutorial. So we wanted to create a video showing how to do this step by step and take you along with us.
This is also useful for the people who are visual learners.
Okay, so the first thing we need to do is download FontForge because we're going to need that to kind of define the spaces between letters. It kind of sets up your fonts into glyph layers and will make it a whole lot easier in stringing letters together to make words. So we're going to go ahead and go to this FontForge website and download FontForge. So then, now that we have FontForge downloaded and installed, we're going to go ahead and find a free font to use. So Megan, where do we find free fonts?
Google Fonts.
Okay.
We're going to go for a thicker one and a little less rounded because that's the easier ones to do with lettering.
And you've already looked, so what kind did you find already?
Notable.
Notable? Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and download Family. Allow. Alright, so now we have our font downloaded in our Downloads folder. In order for this to work properly, we need to create a custom directory to our added custom fonts for Inkstitch. So we're going to go ahead and create a folder where Inkstitch can read our new file. So we're going to go ahead and find a main directory folder here real quick. And then we're going to drag our newly downloaded folder into that. So there it is. And within that folder, you're going to see the TTF file, which is the actual fonts that's going to open with FontForge, and then the license that is in this text file. We don't need this for now, but we do need it in this folder. So we're going to go ahead and double click on this TTF file, and it's going to open up FontForge. And we're going to find our Inkstitch custom fonts folder, Notable, and this is our TTF file. So that's what we're going to open. And here's all of our fonts. And you're going to see that there's a ton of fonts in here in different variations, different languages. Some of them aren't filled out, and that's okay. What we're going to do is we're going to pick the ones that we want to bring over into Inkstitch to be able to be stitched out. So we don't need to select all of them for sure. I think for now, just to show you, we're going to go ahead and just pick our numbers and the letters. We'll just do those, okay? So if you hold down Shift, you can select multiple. We're going to select the ones that we want to keep. So we have 36 total selected, which makes sense because we have 10 numbers and 26 letters. And what we're going to do now is we're going to invert the selection so that we can delete everything else out of this file that we're not bringing over into Inkstitch. So to do that, we're going to go to Edit, and we're going to go to Select and Invert Selection. And that's going to highlight everything else that we are going to delete by hitting Edit and Clear. And you can see it removes everything else but the letters that we want. So everything else is gone. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to Element, Font Info, and then in General, this is where we can get to decide the size that this is going to stitch out, or at least how it's going to set up into Inkstitch. So an EM size is what is kind of the main selector here. So you can change all of these other ones, but if you change this one, it's going to automatically update all the rest. And we found that 100, which I believe corresponds to millimeters in size, is a good one that we can then scale up and down pretty easily from our 4x4 hoop template. So we're going to change this EM size to 100, and then we're going to hit OK. Now we're going to go to File, Generate Fonts, and we're going to actually change this to SVG font. So now it's going to be saved as notable.regular.svg in our notable folder window. Okay, we're going to hit Generate, and that's going to result in errors, and that's okay. We're going to hit Generate, and we are done with Font Forge for now. So we're just going to minimize this. And now you can see we have an SVG file for our font that we can now open up in Inkstitch. So we're just going to double click on this, which should open up Inkstitch. Okay, so it opened up, but you'll notice that there's nothing here. It's zoomed in quite a bit, so we're going to zoom out a little bit here. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to Extensions, Typography, and we're going to set up our typography canvas. And this is where our EM size that we changed, we're going to want to be the exact same. So we're going to change that to 100 as well. And we're going to hit Apply, Close. So that has changed the work area here in our scale. And you'll notice there's still nothing here, and that's okay. We're going to go to Extensions, Typography, and then we're going to convert SVG font to glyph layers. And now we just need to make sure we select enough layers to bring over our glyphs. Now we did 36, but it's better to go over than it is to go under. So we'll just change that to 39. Kind of doesn't matter. You hit Apply. And now you'll see our font is there, and everything is broken down. Let me close that, into layers. So now we have a layer for each character that we brought over.
That's
right
a lot
now,
of letters to
that is a lot of letters to set up for Satin Stitch. So we hide that. You can see they're all broken down into their individual layers. So this is the point where the actual work happens. We're going to actually have to change all of these letter characters into satin stitches individually. So it's a lot of work.
Definitely.
How I like to go about it is to change this color to something easily seeable or different than black, because when I use my Bezier tool, it's going to show up in black. And what we're going to do is we're just going to each piece decide how it's going to go out into satin stitch. And having a node snap tool on will make this a little bit easier. So we're going to click that to there, enter. Now you can see that's how that first rail is there. This definitely doesn't have to be perfect, but you want to get it close if you want it to look like your stitch. And a trick we found is when you want a straight line going across, it's oftentimes hard to get the exact straight line, but if you hold down the control key, it'll lock to 90 degrees, 30 degrees, 0 degrees. So if you hold down that control key, it will give you a nice straight line to create your rail. So just like before, when we do custom satin stitches, what we have to do is select each individual piece. We're going to hold down Shift to make sure we can select different pieces. And then we have to combine them. So Command K on a Mac, Control K on a PC. And then we have to set this up as a custom satin stitch in params. And we have a shortcut for that, so I'm going to start using that. Go to satin column and custom satin stitch. And now you can see that piece of the letter is going to stitch out like that. So we're going to hit apply and quit. And now we move on to the next piece of the letter, which I think will be this part of the A. So again, this is a lot of work for each letter, but sometimes it's worth it if this font is something you will use a lot. So hold down the control key and we'll go just a little bit past.
How do you know where to do the lines?
Well, it's based on what we want the letter to end up stitching out like. So it kind of doesn't matter. What matters is how you want it to look like. And then finally, we'll do our last piece. Now we'll do a check, final check of the letter, all stitched together. All right, that's perfect. That's exactly what we want our satin stitch to look like, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's very important here. We're going to hit apply and quit on all of this. And it's important to remove the original layer that came in. So like this B, you want to get rid of all of this original stuff because this is going to be all fill stitch stuff. So you'll notice I deleted that in the A. And the last thing we're going to do is we're going to auto route our satin stitch, which kind of cleans up the design and gets it going in an order that will work well with as minimal amount of jump stitches as possible. So we're going to do that by going to Extensions, Ink Stitch, and where do we go? Satin Tools, Auto Route Satin Columns. We'll trim the jump stitches, and I don't need to preserve the order. We'll hit apply. And you can see here it auto routed everything out and created some trim cuts. And we can close that. And now our A is done. Let's see what this looks like again. So that's one letter down, 35 to go. So to move on to the next letter, all we have to do is hide glyph layer A and bring up the next letter that you want to copy.
Which is the B.
Which is the B.
How many rails? 2?
At least 2. You can do more if you want. We go back into the selector tool, and then we shift and select everything. We hit Command K. Satin column, custom satin stitch. And now we got our straight line down. Apply and quit. For this, it's going to be rounded, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to break this into 2 bits here. We're going to use this tool here. I'm going to turn snapping tool off. We're going to go inside a bit and kind of create an imaginary outer line. I know this looks weird right now. That's okay. I'm going to do it again. Okay. Go in the node tool and we're just going to shape this. To get it to curve around this B properly, we're going to add much more legs to it. So this part at the top, we want to go straight like that, right? But then we want it to start rounding over. By the middle here, we want it to go nice and level. It should look nice and rounded when we turn it into a custom satin stitch. Just like that.
That's really cool.
Yep. Hit apply and quit, and we're going to do the exact same thing. So we could duplicate it. We're going to hit Command C, Command V, and then we can move this into place. something that's slightly different. That's okay, we can just adjust it. Go back in our nodes tool. So now we're going to delete the red letter so that we have everything that we need for the satin stitch. And we're going to go ahead and auto route. All right, that looks pretty good.
So now onto the C.
So that's a nice little font.
Obviously we didn't do all of them, but we don't need all of them right now.
Yeah, so this is really just to show you how to do this digitizing of your actual font. Unfortunately, it's not as easy as just selecting this and then clicking a button and making it a satin stitch. So we're going to go ahead and stop with just A, B, and C done to show you the rest of the process. So what we're going to do now, and this is very important, is we have to save this SVG as a right arrow .svg. And I didn't pick up on this the first time I was going through this and I was running into errors. You actually have to name it the right arrow .svg. So in order to do that, we're going to go ahead and save as. We need to save it as an SVG, Inkscape SVG, and we need to save it as right arrow. So I'm going to get rid of all this. So in order to get the right arrow on a Mac, we're going to go ahead and go to Edit, Emoji and Symbols, and we're going to go here to arrows, and just this first one right here, rightwards arrow. Now if you did select the leftward arrow, which is here, it would sew out your word from right to left. We want our words to sew out from left to right, so we're going to click on this, and right there you can see now it is right arrow.svg in our notable folder, which is our font, in our Inkscape custom fonts folder. It's an SVG, we'll hit save. So now when we go back into our folder, we should see the right arrow.svg, and that's perfect. The next thing we're going to do is generate a JSON, and you can read up on all the materials on what a JSON is. I honestly don't know, I just know you need it in order for this to work. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and go to Extensions, Inkstitch, Font Management, and we're going to go to Generate JSON. So this is where we get to name our font. We're going to go ahead and pick our file, and this is the file we're generating a JSON for. So our right arrow.svg, and we're going to hit select. Okay, so that's the path where it's going to save, and now we can name it, and we're going to go ahead and name it. You got all your selections here. So force case, if you had just uppercase letters done and not lowercase letters, you can, whenever you type a letter, whether it's lower or uppercase, depending on which ones you digitized, you can force it into that font. So we're going to force an uppercase, and our default font, since we digitized it, is going to be an A. You don't have to put anything there if you don't want to. And that's enough for now for this test. We're going to hit apply. And now we can see we have a font.json in our notable folder. So we're almost there. The last thing we need to do to get this to work is set up our custom font directory. We go to Extensions, Inkstitch, Font Management, Custom Font Directory. And this is where Inkstitch is going to use to pull the file when you type in characters for your particular custom font, where it's going to pull it from. So in our case, it's going to go from our custom font folder that we created, Inkstitch custom fonts. Okay, So it has to be outside of your main font folder. So the parent folder of any custom fonts that you make will be here. So this is the folder we want to highlight for our custom font directory. Hit select. The next step is purely just for looks, but you'll notice when you go to the Inkstitch lettering tool, pull ours up real quick, you'll see previews here of all of the different fonts, and we want our font to do the same. If we didn't do anything else right now, we would just have a blank space here. In fact, you'll see that our notable font has no preview, and I think we want a preview for it. So we can actually do that. The space that we need to create is a 300 pixel by 20 pixel space. Well, first we're going to go ahead and preview something. So let's go ahead and select font, and let's just type in ABBCC. And that's awesome. This is exactly the kind of results that you would want from a custom font that you put in there. But what I'm going to do is create a preview for our lettering tool. And all I'm going to do is take a screen capture of this. Is it Shift Command 4 on a Mac? And I've captured a little image here in my preview. So I'm going to just hold on to that. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and save and close out of this one, create a new one. In this one, I'm going to go ahead and go to document properties, and I'm going to set up by pixel. My width is going to be 300 by 20. And now you can see that's going to be my preview. Now what I can do is I'm going to pull up my little screen capture here and drag it in here. I'm going to hit Control and shrink this down. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take another screen capture of this space. And with this one, we want to name it preview.png. File. So now back into our notable folder, we're just going to drag this preview in here. And then we're going to try doing this lettering tool again. And we do Shift Control L for lettering. And right there, notable, and you can see a nice preview of our new custom font. Just like that.
That's really cool.
Yep, and obviously if we took the time to do every single character, we could type in a real word, but do you want to embroider this out to see if we get some good results on it?
Yeah, I want to see how it will turn out.
Okay. So let's go ahead and save this and go to the embroidery machine.
Let's go. That's really nice.
Yeah, not too shabby. We can make some adjustments on the B to move that part up a bit, and this part we can overlap. Yeah, your C looks good.
Thanks.
All right. So this was a really cool project.
Yeah.
I'm so glad we learned how to do this and were able to follow the directions to get it to work right. Because we just created our own custom font that we can reuse over and over as we wish. Of course, we have a lot more letters to get done.
We only have tab.
Yeah. So what we learned here is it's going to be some trial and error to get the letters to stitch out exactly the way we want them. But we got it to work. We were able to follow the tutorial, and now we have something new added to our Inkstitch tools. Mm-hmm. So we really hope you're able to follow along. I know it's quite the process to get all the way through it, And it's even a longer process digitizing each and every one of your letters. Good luck to you.
Anyways, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like it if you liked it.
Like it.
Subscribe if you enjoy our content.
Subscribe.
And turn on those notifications so you get my every single time I post a video. Stay crafty.
And be happy.
Bye!